What's up, agents? So today's call is gonna be quite different. Today's gonna be a networking call with not only a real estate agent but also an investor, right? It's very important for not only a real estate agent to know their market, but to know the people who they're working with. In today's call, I strictly focus on that, and this is a totally awesome call. I'm looking forward to creating more of these calls and with more realtors, right? Realtors, if you're interested, hopping on this, don't be afraid to DM me or comment down below. Or like and subscribe, right? A like will never hurt. If you're trying to see more content like this, you're trying to see more realtors and investors connect more, and build a network, right? You want to build a network with me, and you want to sort of expand your field with investors and your realtors, don't be afraid to reach out to me and get that settled. Other than that, let's hop right into the video.
For a little over a year. And let's see. And so, yeah, I primarily want to focus on listings and investors and actually doing the investing side and getting listings. But it seems like right now I'm getting some buyer action. And so I'm exploring that avenue. Hopefully those things pan out. And I guess it's just a matter of like laying the groundwork and seeing what comes after and just kind of going with the flow. So that's where I'm at, just kind of navigating the real estate world and trying to find out where I fit in and what my niche is.
Awesome.
Cool. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Okay. My name is Dejanay. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I've been a realtor for almost 2 years now, and I'm looking to niche down to first-time home buyers and getting some listings as well.
Awesome. So, Alexis, if you could sort of introduce yourself, what you do, and sort of the investor side, right? I know we talked about creative financing and subject to deals, but just to get clarity, can you sort of break down like how does that work? But of course, first you introduce yourself of everything.
Sure. Yeah, guys. Sorry, I'm about to be driving here, so I don't want to, crash or anything. But I think I have a nice photo up there. My name is Alexis Morgan. I started in real estate last year, and I was about to go the realtor route, but I got introduced to a couple investors, and that's the route I ended up taking. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Pace Morby, but he does all creative financing, which is subject to seller financing, pretty much buying houses without the bank, which usually is a jaw dropper for most of the population. Everyone's like, well, how do you do that? So that's really what I got into, and I did a couple wholesale deals. Not sure if you guys are familiar with wholesale, but it's similar to a realtor, except it's not commission. I actually will get the house under contract, and then I'll assign it to a buyer, and I'll make the difference between what I have it under contract for and what I sold it to my buyer for. So I did that a lot with cash deals. I did a couple creative deals as well. And right now I'm working with really for over 25 years, and he does all. Any questions, or if anyone has anything on their heart, I can answer the questions, or I could just go into kind of what is seller finance and subject to. And both of you guys sound like you're dealing with residential clients, so might be helpful to understand how people can buy a house or what kind of offers you can make if they have bad credit, for example, or even if you're interested in working with investors, you can offer better deals to them. It's up to you.
Oh yeah, so Dejanay and Regina, right? They're both interested in moving, not moving, but like learning more about how investors work. And of course, I have previous realtor, like I have a realtor name here, like named Shalita. She's a bit busy, couldn't join today. Shalita and Reggie. Shalita actually owns Airbnbs, and She works with investors across country. She's from Atlanta, Georgia, and Reggie, right? Reggie works with home buyers and investors. And he's in Dallas, Texas. So they sort of understand that part. But what I know so far is that they have buy and hold investors, which she sort of clarified. I mean, Daphne clarified a bit what that meant. It was basically with wholesaling. I wish she would hop on the call with me as well. She seemed eager to. But yeah, that was basically what we covered last week. Yeah, again we broke down how Shalita owns Airbnbs. And yeah, that's sort of where we at now. I sort of introduced him to seller and subject to deals. We also talk about Pace Morby. We try to hop on make this I reached to him to hop on a call. He said yes, he would love to, but he just hasn't given me a date yet. So still trying to get that settled in. And yeah, so realtors, you have any questions to Alexis ask now before she actually dives deep into it? If yeah, go ask along.
Okay. How could you offer sub two deals to your buyers client per se?
So you
She's on mute, I
deal.
think.
You just want to make sure that your buyer understands what they're getting in existing mortgage. Can you hear me?
I can hear you better. Yes.
All right. Subject two is going to be when you're taking over an existing mortgage, meaning that there's a deed and there's a mortgage to the house. You guys are familiar with the difference between a mortgage, I'm sure, since you're realtors. But I the mortgage is just simply the debt on the house. So when you do a subject to transaction, you're just going to be taking over the debt. So when you do that transaction, the deed transfers to the buyer's name, but the debt, the mortgage, stays in the seller's name. You're buying the house subject to the existing loan. So as a buyer, what I'm looking at is, can I qualify for a loan? And a lot of times as an investor, when I'm talking to sellers, the way that I make this make sense to them, I say, hey, listen, I love the house, you love the house, but I'm not going to go get a loan to pay off a loan that's already in place. The only people who make money in that scenario is the banks. Why don't I just take over the loan that's already there? And that really helps things click for a seller who wants to sell and already has a loan in place. It just doesn't make sense. Like, if you really think about it, why am I going to go pull a new loan to pay off a loan that is already there? Like, literally the only people who make money in that transaction is the banks. And I'm pretty sure, they have enough money. Would you guys agree? So that's how you could present it to a seller. And then as the buyer, you just want to have an understanding of, hey, is this your only option? Is this the only way that you can buy a house? Because maybe you can't qualify. Or is this just a good back pocket option, that we can slip in? And the beautiful thing about creative finance, that Pace talks about, and a lot of my mentors have talked about, and that I've noticed, is that when you do deals like this, whether it be subject to or seller finance, you can really pay whatever the price that the seller wants is. It's their price, but on our terms, right? So if, let's say that we're in a situation where there's no mortgage, the house is worth 300,000 and they're asking 500,000, we would all look at that deal and say that's horrible, right? But if we talk to them and said, we'll pay 500,000 if we can give you 10K down and pay you $1,000 a month, and we'll finish the loan out at year 10. I mean, who's not going to do that deal? You just gotta, it just makes sense. So creative finance allows you to pay a higher price, and usually in a subject to transaction, that you're often working with people who have little to no equity, which is really common these days with the market changes. So if someone bought a house at the peak of the market in 2021, end of 2021, maybe March of 2022, or December, where the peak of the market, and now they're trying to sell the house and the house is worth the exact same, we all know with closing costs, realtor fees, all the things that come, you just are going to end up losing money. You're going to have to come out of pocket to sell that house. So in order to not come out of pocket, what you can do is get a higher purchase price and have a subject to transaction take place. So subject to is when there's mortgage in place. Seller finance is when there's no mortgage. Subject to is when there's little to no equity. Seller finance is often when there's no, there's all of its equity. There's no mortgage on the house. And then when you're in the middle, that's what we call a hybrid. And that's when you're doing a mixture of subject to and a mixture of seller finance. And that happens when you have a house that's worth 500,000 and there's a $200,000 mortgage, but the sellers don't need to sell it for 200,000. They're not in a rush, but they also can't get their price of 550. So someone can go in there and offer them 550, take over the $200,000 mortgage, seller finance the remaining equity on the house. And that's creative finance. So what a lot of my peers have been doing, what a lot of my peers have been doing is calling agents and offering these types of solutions to houses that either have little to no equity, like we would do a subject to transaction in that situation, or houses that have been sitting on the market for over 80 days or 90 days because these people are just stuck on their price, right? Those are the situations that we're looking for. We're not looking for the brand new listings or the excited sellers who have a, decent sized normal home and they just want to get a fair market price, whatever. We're either looking for the people who have little to no equity, they're in some pain, or we're looking for the people who, they could sell this house or they could not sell this house. They don't really care. They're looking for gain. They're looking for a big come up from the sale. This middle area where it's like, we're okay, we're good, we just need a fair price, whatever. We don't typically go after those because there's not much for those sellers to gain off of doing a creative finance transaction. Does this all make sense?
Yeah, so I work with a specific investor that does picking up creative offers in my market particularly. I'm running into a lot of agents who will immediately say no, they're not interested in that, and I don't know if it's really just like representing the seller or it's really just them not wanting to deal with it. It's a lot of like, no, they don't want to go with that, and I'm looking at the house and I'm like, the house isn't worth what you're trying to get for it. I mean, this is like, it makes sense because they get what they want, and I get a lot of pushback from actual agents where it seems like, I don't know if they're just not familiar or they just don't understand it, but they are not inclined to do a creative finance deal regardless of whether the house has been sitting for a long time. And so that's what I've been dealing with.
Yeah, a lot of times agents are afraid that they, like with these deals, you put so little money down, agents are afraid that they're not going to get paid. So in order to get over that hump, a lot of times we just say, hey, we'll pay your commission. Like, well, the first thing that we'll say is that, you're obligated to present this offer. Like, that's your job first and foremost. But when we have good rapport and it's like kind of a more friendlier approach, we'll go and say like, hey, we're going to pay your commission. Like I don't want you to worry about your commission just because this is a creative finance deal. I'm going to make sure that gets taken care of one way or another. Whether it comes out of the seller's pocket or the buyer's pocket is something that can be discussed. But that's usually what I find when there's a ton of pushback is they're afraid that they're not going to get paid because usually the seller pays them. And if the seller is taking a deal where they get 5K or 10K down,
they're like, where's my cut?
Yeah, exactly. They're worried about themselves.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, Alexis, we
how
actually
would
went.
you persuade? How would you? How would you persuade then? I mean, because typically that is like they will offer lower money down to take over this creative finance deal, and so the investor I work with is like, oh, I'll take care of Regina because I'm the one that found the house. How do you persuade a seller if they're not getting very much money as a down payment to pay their agent?
A lot of times as the investor, we just pay the agent. So that's something you got to talk to your investor about if he's comfortable doing that. But it does help in the conversation. I'll tell you that.
Okay, and how does the seller get paid?
You're a bit muffled, Dejana. Can you repeat the question, please? It sounds a bit muffled.
I was saying, how does the seller get paid?
How does the seller get paid?
If they take over the mortgage, or are they just trying to get rid of it and not caring about being paid out of it?
So how the seller? Well, basically, what I've been heard so far is the seller gets paid by, let's say, if the subject to deal, the investor takes over the mortgage, meaning the pressure gets off of them, right? And I think you also that's how you pay for the property. Leximus, help me if I'm wrong here.
What's the question?
So how does the seller get paid in these creative deals and these creative financing?
Well, if it's a subject to deal, they most of the time get their money up front because you're just taking over their mortgage. So you paying that mortgage every month would be technically them getting paid. But in a seller finance deal, they have a down payment and a monthly payment. In a seller finance deal, the seller becomes the bank. So just like you would go and get a mortgage, the seller just becomes your mortgage. So that's how they're getting paid off. Whereas traditionally, the mortgage company would pay off the seller with cash. Instead of doing that, the seller becomes the bank.
Yeah, you're basically
Does that
making
make sense?
monthly payments to the seller instead of the bank.
Yep. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah. So Alexis, you also mentioned about pre-foreclosure. Ooh, I'm sorry. You also mentioned about pre-foreclosures or on the last call. Can you sort of break down like like how if people target realtors target pre-foreclosures is good for a subject to deal? Could you sort of break down on that part?
Yeah, for sure. Pre-foreclosures are some of the best leads because they have a lot of times they have little to no equity.
Awesome. So pre-foreclosure.
Because just they have no option but to sell
Mhm.
a lot of times. So they have to sell, you just have to follow up with them. And if they do have equity, great, it can be a really good cash deal for a fix and flipper. But if they don't have equity, which is way more common, it could be a good sub-2 deal.
Now, how about expired listings? How does what sort of deals or strategies can you use for that?
Expired listings is a mixed bag because you don't know if someone has a mortgage or not. You just have to call and figure out why the house didn't sell. So a
Mm,
lot of times the people just want a certain price and no one could give them that price. So it could be a good lead gen source for seller finance deals or a hybrid deal.
ooh, okay,
But you
okay,
just have to find out how much equity they have.
awesome. Any other questions, realtors? For Alexis, you guys have in mind? Hmm. Okay, nothing so far.
What contract does she use? Because are we, as a realtor, am I forced to use the car forms, or can I use my own contract?
So I use my own contracts, but I'm also not a realtor. I know there's a lot of rules being a realtor. You have to follow certain rules about how you work with people. So I'm sure there's rules in California. You said you're in. So if
Yes.
you look at the structure of your contracts, there should be something on there or your network. I'm sure you could find out how to structure these deals with the contracts. But I use contracts from my mentor, Pace Morby.
Hmm. Okay. So Alexis, just because I really want to get a hear from you of what you think of like realtors in general, is what do you think realtors are lacking nowadays? Let's say like Regina mentioned earlier, sometimes they're just pushing the deal of investors away, right? Because they're just not knowledgeable about it. What would be your advice for some realtors who are only doing these traditional ways and not really know much about investing? What would be your advice?
I think I would say that I mean just to learn. I think investors are the most consistent buyers. Retail buyers are really emotional and sometimes getting qualified by the bank doesn't work out. It's just you never know where your next income is going to come from, whereas with investors, if you work with a consistent investor, someone who's been in the game, you know their buy box, you know what they like, you know what they don't like. I would just say continuously to network with investors and learning from people like Pace who are teaching free education on YouTube so that you can.
Hmm. Cool. And let's say for because this is gonna be posted on my YouTube, right? This is gonna be posted on real estate agents watch my YouTube channel, especially new agents. Now,
Sure.
do you recommend new agents to start doing this and start learning more about this, or do you recommend them to get experience first with the traditional method and then move on to investors? What would be your sort of advice for new agents?
For new agents, I would definitely say to work with investors first. I think me not getting my real estate license was one of the best decisions I made because it's just it just makes more sense. It's less emotional, it's more logical on the investing side, and therefore it's more predictable.
Hmm. Awesome. And then lastly, what are other investment strategies you know of? If you could just sort of give a brief explanation of some, just to have in mind.
As in buying houses or just like in general.
Yeah, yeah, just like fix and flippings, the Burr method, and then there's I think sober living financing, which is something new I've recently heard of. 'Cause I watched Pace Morby as well. Uh,
Yes, something really cool that my friend does, his name's Abraham Gray. He does these rooming homes, which I've been really looking into. So he'll take a house and he'll make every room a bedroom. And then the house will cash flow him like $5,000, way more than it ever could as a traditional rental, way more than it ever could as an Airbnb. So that's a strategy that is not really talked about. It's really cool.
hmm. Well,
But
because
it's a buy and hold strategy too.
uh,
So it falls under that umbrella.
if you could just sort of pass me his Instagram, I'll probably reach out to him just to get him on the call as well. I'm actually curious about
For
learning
sure.
more.
I think his Instagram is official Abraham Gray. Right, Abraham?
Yeah, just DM me.
Abraham Gray official.
Cool. Just DM it to me. I'll reach to him because probably to hop on a call in 2 weeks from now. Oh yeah, just
Gotcha.
I got it. I'll probably I'll reach to him to get him in the call. And then yeah, just any before I get to leave, right? It was almost time. What are some like lasting thoughts for you realtors or Alexis, right? What would be something else you guys want to say, or piece of advice in general before we actually close the call?
I mean, the last thing that I'll say is that if you guys have any potential deals or seller finance or sub two opportunities, I'm always happy to talk to sellers and help negotiate the deals.
Oh yeah, I send this to you guys on your emails, right? Alexis here is looking to build a relationship, looking to network. Which again, I'm trying to get more realtors to actually join the group chat to actually be available for that, right? Trying to get more realtors and investors in this group chat to expand the network. And of course, if these opportunities do come, if investors want to work with realtors, I'll be glad that you guys to network in this group. Other than that, thank you guys for being here. It's been lovely. Looking to do this again probably 2 weeks from now with the new investor, with more investors and another new realtor, hopefully. Um, yeah. Regina,
Thanks so much, Kristen.
Alexis, thank you for being here. Uh, take care.
Peace.
Peace out.